Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy AAron2420 bringing you guys my Hive Season 5 Week 1 Kakuna Division Team Builder versus TDG, coach of the Swedish Seakings. Before I get into this, I know you guys are going to point out a couple of really big flaws in my team. I already know. I'm going to cover them myself, don't worry. This is actually done after the game. I didn't realize this when I was playing the game, so it's a little unfortunate that I missed these. But it is what it is. Those things do happen, of course, sometime. Regardless, though, the matchup for this game, I'm just pulling it up real quick on my phone, so I don't need to tab out. My opponent's team is Mew, Z-Greninja, Empoleon, Whimsicott, Jellicent, Cryogonal, Megazard Y, so it's Yard, of course, one of the mods that on the channel, obviously, you guys have seen I do a really bad job versus Yard, usually. Z-Como, Landorus, Sandforce with Z, Bisharp, and Electivire. So, right off the bat, very scary matchup in my opinion. As I mentioned in my draft analysis, my team hates ground types, especially really offensive ones like Lando I, who has really solid both physical and special offensive stats. So prepping on this thing was actually really hard to do. I'm also really scared of Zard Y because my team doesn't have a great switch into it. My best switching would be like Blastoise, I guess, or like really fat Chomp. So Yard, of course, is really terrifying Mon. The fact that I have no recovery Mons that can truly beat it 1v1, at least, well, let me rephrase that. No recovery Mons that can truly like switch in well. That's really terrifying. Garchomp, of course, can switch in, and obviously I do outspeed it and can revenge it off. But the fact that I'm still taking like 50 to 60% is really big damage that I prefer not to take. Regardless, though, I think I'm going to get into my team now because I've rambled on long enough. I know I'm probably not making much sense, but hopefully the sets do. So first up, I have Mega Glalie this week with Explosion, Spikes, Ice Shard, and Earthquake. I almost brought Freeze Shard this week and just brought Triple Ice, but then I ran some Calcs, and Explosion to Jellicent, even if it's Fizz Death, is still a 2-hit KO regardless. I know obviously it would kill me doing so, but at the very least I can bring in something to pick it off. Like, let's say Ferrothorn, Gardevoir. I don't think Jellicent comes anyway personally. I think it has a really bad matchup versus my team, but obviously I do have a way to essentially break it really easily. So literally he needs to click Recover on the turn, I click Explosion, or it's easy to just pick off next turn. So that's why Explosion. It also nukes through Yard. It does really solid damage to pretty much everything on his team besides like Empoleon. But Empoleon I do have Earthquake for, and it does a fair amount of damage. I do have Spikes as well, because Spikes versus his team are pretty good. Obviously, he does have a Lando, and he does have a Yard, but otherwise, Spikes are pretty good. Oh yeah, he also has Cryogonal. But versus things like Como, Spikes are going to be really important. Empoleon obviously really doesn't like Spikes. Mew doesn't really like Spikes either, because of course that's free damage off on Mew, and it could very well change a lot of hits, such as rolls on my Garchomp, because Garchomp, I'll get into that later, but it does around slightly under half depending on the spread. I think in the game it actually did slightly under half. So because of that, obviously, you know, there is some benefits to running the Spikes, as it can very well change damage rolls from 1 spike to 2 spikes to even 3 spikes. It can very well just shift the course of the battle. So that's why I really like Spikes personally. It's just consistent damage versus anything that's on the ground. Whereas Rocks, of course, it's just type dependent. So I think the Spikes are going to be really solid this week. It's also a backup spiker to my Hazard lead in general, which I'll get into later on. Next up, we have Keldeo with Secret Sword, Stone Edge, Icy Wind, and Toxic. If you look at his team, of course, he has 2 Mons that are really weak to water, being Lando, which isn't actually taken out, unless if I was like a really offensive build. I think I'd need like Life Orb or something, or like a Specs or something to actually KO with the Surfer Hydro Pump, if I'm not mistaken. I could very well be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Icy Wind, regardless, though, does help with things like Como as well, so I would need Icy Wind anyway on my spread, I felt like. And it still does OHKO the Lando with the spread, so I felt like that was really nice. Not only that, but with Yard up in the Sun, my Water-type moves aren't really actually doing a lot of damage to Yard. Even from Specs, I believe Yard still can live a hit, and of course, it would bot me with Solar Beam. Stone Edge, however, does guarantee take out Yard, unless if he's some sort of really defensive build. But regardless, after Rocks, I certainly 2-hit KO, no questions asked. So that's, of course, really beneficial to Keldeo. I figured I had a 4th move anyway. I might as well bring Toxic, because that's a solid way to actually hit Jellicent, which is, in my opinion, this is the only Mon that he brings Jellicent for, is Keldeo, because it's a really solid Keldeo switch in. So I felt like that Toxic could, of course, definitely pressure the Jellicent really well, as Jellicent wouldn't be a Cleric. You would need to bring something like Cleric Mew, for example, to actually get around my Toxic. So I feel like that, of course, in itself is a really solid option, in my opinion, in my prep. So hopefully it can work out for me. Hopefully he doesn't bring Cleric Mew. If he does, of course, I could definitely see why, as my team does have a lot of status potential that could definitely cripple his team. Things like Thunder Wave on Gardevoir, which I'll get into later on. Toxic, of course, and the Keldeo that you guys are seeing right now. So I do think that there's definitely merit for bringing Cleric Mew. I'm just hoping he doesn't bring it. Next up, we have Scolipede. I brought 4 attack Scolipede this week. I actually was very tempted to bring just a Baton Pass and then pass him like an SD Chomp and just sweep through his team. However, I felt like that Chomp needed to be just ran differently, and I'll get into why when I get to Chomp. Regardless though, 4 attack Scolipede actually does a lot of work to his team. I have Aqua Tail, Rock Slide, Earthquake, and Mega Horn. Mega Horn, with the spread, even if he's Fizzdeath Mew, has a chance to kill after rocks, or even just Spike plus rocks, depending on how defensive he is. But most cases, I can kill Mew after 1 spike plus a rock, or, of course, 2 spikes. So that's, of course, really beneficial. Earthquake should 2-hit KO Empoleon, unless if you Chuck a Berry. But even then, depending on his spread, I could still potentially 2-hit KO. Rock Slide, of course, VR. Aqua Tail is for Lando Lando I, because otherwise Lando I, of course, is going to live. Mega Horn still hits things like Greninja well. Como takes any hit that I could have thrown regardless, so I didn't really care about that. Jellicent, of course, takes any hit regardless, so I didn't really care about that. A lot of his mons either A, are hit by these coverage, or B, I had no coverage for whatsoever in the entire history of Scolipede. The only thing I guess I could have brought was like Throat Chop for Jellicent, but I didn't really feel like that dedicating Throat Chop was necessarily worth it when I could just bring Mega Horn and still handle Mew, which I felt like was a greater effect to my team anyway. And I do still have, of course, things like Glalie and Gardevoir to handle Jellicent, or at the very least, Toxic and Keldeo as well, I think is a better way. But Gardevoir can still always just hit a Moonblast, and that's doing at least some damage. Garchomp, of course, can still hit it for fair damage with Earthquake, assuming I don't get burned. But after Glalie the Explosion, that's going to probably kill anyway. Regardless, though, Scolipede handles most of his mons really well offensively. Next up, we have Garchomp with a Figgy Berry this week. I have Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Rock Slide, and Dragon Claw. The reason I brought this spread was because the EVs are designed to basically just get damage rolls at any versus things like Como, Empoleon, Yard, etc. Stealth Rocks, it's a backup rocker to my Hazard lead, which is probably my dedicated lead, especially if I do see a Yard, in my opinion. The speed is designed to outpace Lando I, and my Figgy Berry is mainly so that way then I can get some recovery back versus Lando, as Lando is a very threatening mon versus my team, as I may have mentioned a billion times. I don't want Lando having any free hits if I can avoid it, which is why, of course, you've seen the team built as it is, because I don't have switch-ins. My switch-ins are like Blastoise, which of course he could bring like Grass Knot for example, or even just Toxic, and then that puts Blastoise in the timer. So, of course, things like that are very detrimental to my switch-in, which is really bad versus the rest of his team. It doesn't take things like Solar Beam from Zard Y. Como could potentially set up on it. Of course, I do have Roar, but if I'm dedicating Roar to a spot, and that's one less slot, I do have to hit the rest of his mons. And Empoleon also just hard walls it unless I bring Aura Sphere. But if we bring Aura Sphere, that does really bad versus a lot of other things. It would really only also hit Greninja, I guess. Blastoise overall, I really just didn't feel like was fit for the matchup, so I sort of had to dedicate Garchomp to being my Suedo Lando check. Overall, I think that Garchomp can at least put in some work, unless if he's like a modest Lando. I should take an HP Ice as well, and it should boost me back up with my Figgy Berry, depending on his spread. So that's why I put all of it into Spadef versus HP. I just take it better. So yeah, that's really it for Garchomp. I think Garchomp actually is a really stellar matchup this game, so I'm really hoping that it can put in some work. Next up, we got regular Gardevoir. I forgot to put in nicknames. I just realized I forgot nicknames in this team. Damn it. Forgot it with Cuba too. Regardless though, we have Moonblast, Protect, Thunder Wave, and Wish. I felt like Gardevoir really only needed Moonblast. I almost brought Icy Wind, however, Icy Wind with a really defensive spread didn't actually kill Lando, and Moonblast was still 2-hit KOing regardless. So I felt like that was the better play. Thunder Wave, of course, is really nice for things like Yard. It stops Como from being able to set up as easily. Greninja really hates being paralyzed. It's really everything besides Lando hates getting paralyzed, because of course, even if it's something like Empoleon that's really slow and doesn't necessarily need the speed drops, if Empoleon maybe misses a turn going for Defog, of course, that's huge for us if we can keep our hazards up because he got paralyzed. So of course, that's really nice. Protect is to guarantee our wishes get off if we really need them to. Moonblast hits Como, hits Lando really well. Hits Lando kind of well. It's just our best status option and our best stab option, I felt like, this game. So that's really it for guard. HP and defense is really just it gets from Lando better because it's really scary versus our team. Finally, this is our dedicated hazard lead. We have Ferrothorn here with Spike, Stealth Rock, Toxic, and Power Whip. I believe Power Whip was invested to 2-hit KO Jellicent, if I'm not mistaken. But either Jellicent, Lando, or Empoleon, I genuinely forget which it was. The Spadef was designed, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to take... I actually forget what the Spadef was for, if I'm being completely honest. But it was just to take on hits from his team in general really well. Things like the Lando, of course, the Greninja, the Mew, Empoleon. Empoleon's not really that offensive anyway. Really, it was just meant to take hits. That's what it was. I genuinely forgot what the defensive calcs were for on this thing. I have Toxic just because his team really doesn't like switching him Toxic besides Empoleon. if I'm not mistaken. I think it's his only toxic switch in. Regardless, though, this is my way to toxic Mew really easily because Synchronize wouldn't affect me. Spikes are really nice versus his team. Stealth Rocks are very nice versus his team. If he leads off the yard, my plan is to go through Rocks turn 1 on the Ferrothorn. I guarantee to live. Then I bring in Garchomp, force it out. It's now taking 50%. Of course, he can bring in something like a Mew, but if Mew comes in on Rocks, then Earthquake could potentially 2 a KO it depending on its spread. So Mew wouldn't exactly be a switch in because unless he's Scarfed, he wouldn't outspeed me either. So my play is to really just benefit off of turn 1 Rocks. If I get up turn 1 Rocks, I think that puts me in a really solid position for the rest of the game, in my opinion. So I'm hoping for the best. If he doesn't bring Yard, of course, I do still benefit from Spikes because besides Lando and Cryogonal in that case, assuming he didn't bring the Yard, that is, it would be Lando and Cryogonal left. Everything else is really not taking Spikes well at all. Things like Como hate it, Empoleon hates it, Jellicent would hate it, Mew hates it. I'm forgetting the rest of his mons, if I'm being completely honest, because besides Jellicent, I'm only remembering, well, besides Jellicent and Lando, I'm really only remembering what he brought. But in general, his team really doesn't like hazards, because even like Greninja, for example, if I can get one hazard up, if that's Sash Greninja, Sash is now gone. So that's always really beneficial as well. I think regardless though, I've rambled on long enough. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this team builder. Hopefully you made some sense out of what I was going through in my head. I know I have a very confusing head, so obviously it might not have made sense to you, but it made sense to me at least at the time of building. So hopefully you guys did enjoy. Tomorrow we'll be taking on TDG in week 1 of Hive Kakuna Season 5. Until then, I will see you guys later. Peace out.
And we're back. So sorry about that. I accidentally recorded, I accidentally forgot to record my game. And instead I recorded 1 second of me clicking off. Either that, or I actually forget. I'm literally editing this the day of, and I realized that my live comm never actually went through. So I was going to do live comm. I'll do it for week 2. But basically what happened was I only got 1 second of the video. I'm not sure why that is, but I only got 1 second. So it's either A, I forgot to click record, and then I accidentally noticed the light was still on and I just double clicked, or B, the recording file fucked up. So regardless, bright side, it's not like it was something like I showed on live. I can actually post-com this. So if this, in terms of any of my content to have this happen to, this is probably the best content, especially because it's Wi-Fi at least. So it's not like, it's Showdown at least. So it doesn't take me time to like dump the replay and just, you know, edit the background. This is the easiest thing that could have fucked up. So as much as I dislike that I have to post comment, I think my live comm reaction, especially to this game, was amazing. I thought it was a really fun live comm. But if it had to happen in any game, at least it was a Hive Showdown game because, as I said, I just pull the replay up from the chat, we record, and it's simple as that. We're all good. So I'm going to post-com this. On the bright side, I will sound a little less stupid because I sounded really stupid in my post-com, and I can at the very least explain my thought process instead of just being like, wait a second. So this will be at least a little more well-constructed. So I'm hoping you guys enjoy. I'm going to just play for a second. Just, oh god, forgot music off, Okay, so I'm just going to switch sides real quick and then reset, just because now it's on my perspective. So basically, as you can see, my opponent has the Zard, I believe Zard Y. Yeah, it's Zard Y. Zard Y, Como, Greninja, not Glalie, fuck, Cryogonal, Empoleon, and Mew. So the first thing I saw with this team was no Lando. I figured no offensive ground type, that's fine by me. My team doesn't switch in well versus it anyway. My Garchomp was 3 at killing, and that was probably my best mod to take a hit from Lando. So you already know that we're really thankful for that, of course. My cat is, of course, scratching at my green screen. Get the fuck off, April. I told you you're not allowed to scratch at that. So next up that I noticed is that his team is really aggressive this week with like 2 walls being Empoleon and Mew, and that's really it. Everything else is just really aggressive. So I feel like that TDG, especially from what I've heard, is going to be playing really aggressive. It made sense from his draft. He did have a few walls on his draft. They were mostly Waters and Mew. But I figured, you know, maybe there's a chance for balance. This really doesn't seem like balance. This just seems like hazards plus offense, in my opinion. With maybe a stall breaker Mew, if anything. Spoilers, it's actually a stall breaker Mew. And I'll get into Mew a little bit later because Mew actually plays a very important part in this game. Right off the bat, I did decide that I was going to lead off versus his Greninja, of course. I was going to lead off with my Ferrothorn. I figured my Ferrothorn, as I mentioned in the team builder, perfectly versus anything he wants to lead off with. He luckily does go hard into Yard, and I decided my turn 1 play was to go for Toxic there, because I do have a Sash, and even then Greninja couldn't break it no matter what move it clicked. I figured this was not going to have Low Kick. He does have, of course, a Yard and a Como to handle my Ferrothorn. Low Kick Greninja didn't make sense. So my best play is the Toxic, because I figured he was either going to hard swap into Yard or Como, or plan B is that he stays in and just sets up spikes versus me, and then I just wear him down. I thought that no matter what, if I got the rocks up this turn anyway, it's not like it's going to matter, because if he's going yard at all, he's going in now, before I have the rocks up. So I figured that it made more sense to just click Toxic. Luckily, we do land, and this is, of course, going to punish yard. We do have Stash as well, so this does mean that we can guarantee to get up our rocks. He actually does play a little safe here, of course. He doubles out into Mew. The Mew, of course, I did feel like that my rocks were my best play because I did guarantee live the hit. He probably thought that I was going to switch, and then, of course, now goes for Taunt, of course, seeing that I am just utility, which is perfectly fine. Sadly, I did not get off the Toxic, but it's whatever, in all honesty. That would have been the case, too. The best mod to click Toxic versus, in all honesty. He does go for Super Fang, of course. This is his only damaging move, actually. And I scout here just to see if he's going to go for maybe a Toxic. He actually goes for Heal Bell here, so of course he takes advantage of my Protect. I just wanted to see what he'd go for. In all honesty, I probably shouldn't have clicked that. It would have made more sense to just go for literally anything else. Here, I do make a misplay, of course. I saw that he revealed Heal Bell, and I decided to click Thunder Wave anyway for Parahacks. Very big misplay here. It essentially just made my guard sack water, so of course that was not preferred. My guard, as you can see, is now paralyzed. I do not have Heal Bell on my spread, so of course that's going to be a big detriment later on in the game. But it does at least create a sack, I guess, which is the thing. He does go for Heal Bell here, of course. Made sense. It's his best play. I go for Wish. I'm trying to just get up as much HP as possible. I don't know why I'm trying to preserve this thing at this point, because it's paralyzed, which means that if I literally fuck up 1 point versus Como, I no longer have a Gardevoir. And this thing was literally brought on for Como. I do have other monsters, of course, like Icy Wind Keldeo does beat it 1v1. But I still essentially do have a dead guard here. And even me just clicking Moonblast at this point is pretty useless. I was shocked here that I did actually... Oh no, I clicked Protect there. That's right, I wanted to click Protect. I was going to say, I was shocked that my turn hit first, but that makes more sense now. Regardless though, I go into a little bit of a stall war with Mew. It essentially just ends up with me switching out here at this... Well, maybe not here, I forget what turn. So it was here, okay. I do switch out into Scolipede here, because I realized that this thing can't actually touch my Scolipede, and I should be able to do a lot of damage to it. However, I did predict that he was going to go into Empoleon, but I figured that my Mega Horn should be doing enough anyway. That plus Earthquake should OHKO it. So my safest play was just to click Mega Horn, kill off the Mew. We do go for Earthquake here, of course, and we get the crit, but even with the Shucka Berry, he still does... Well, with the Shucka Berry, even with the crit, we're not enough to kill. And we do, of course, lose our Scolipede versus this Empoleon. It's ultimately fine in the end, because I do just bring in Glalie here, and Glalie, of course, sets up the coverage for Empoleon, being Earthquake. So we click Earthquake, Glalie gets his first kill of the season, Glalie the GOAT. Next up, he does, of course, bring in his Cryogonal. Cryogonal, very solid mod to take hits from this thing. I can only kill it with Explosion. So I am going to double back out into Ferrothorn here. Of course, he does go for the Rapid Spin and breaks our Sash, which really does suck. And not only that, but he gets rid of our rocks, which means I cannot actually keep this thing in versus Yard anymore, which is unfortunate. However, we do get the Toxic off anyway, so Yard is again Toxic. But I can't necessarily play as aggressively as I want to with the Ferrothorn anymore, because I don't have my Sash. So he's actually going to stay in this time, probably predicting that I would stay in as well, and he just clicks Fire Blast. Of course, very safe play by my opponent. At this moment in the game, he, as you can see, is going to just take some more toxic damage. I'm going to go into Keldeo because I figure my Stone Edge is pretty free. He doubles here in a Mew, and we end up actually missing our Stone Edge. This doesn't really matter a lot because Mew would have still barely taken any damage. My guess is maybe like 10%, probably 20 at most. I do, again, make another fuck up and click Toxic. I clearly did not learn my lesson from the Gardevoir, and I decided to Toxic Mon with Synchronized Heal Bell yet again. It would be like if I Toxic an Umbreon 50 times. It doesn't change the end result. Regardless, though, I do want a Glalie here. I figured that Glalie was a very nice option because his removal is Cryogonal, of course, and at the very least, I do have options to set up spikes here because this Mew cannot actually break my Glalie. It sort of hit me here, but I do actually forget a little bit later on the Mew cannot actually hit my Glalie. But I do take advantage of this, of course. So I got my 2 spikes up. I figure 2 spikes is plenty versus his team. He's going to go into Cryogonal, of course. I do want to go for the 3rd spike, though, however, just in case. Of course, 2 spikes is really all I need, but 3 spikes is just there if I needed. I'm going to double into Ferrothorn again because, of course, Iron Barb's damage to the Cryogonal, I thought that he wouldn't necessarily have Recover. However, he actually does have Recover, which is unfortunate for us. He's going to just click Rapid Spin here again, which is perfectly fine. I decided that I was going to click Power Whip because I did anticipate him to just click Spin again. And this Power Whip does show that he cannot actually recover up versus me, which is great. I can at least get some damage versus him. So I figured that by that he was going to be switching out. I wasn't sure what he'd switch out into, but I thought that the rocks were a really safe play because he was either clicking recover, so he definitely wasn't going to click rapid spin again, or he was going to switch out. So either way, rocks were a safe play. Yard is now pressured. We're all good. He's going to go for Dragon Dance here, which is fine because, of course, I do get off a Toxic versus the Komo. So Komo is now going to get worn down really easily between my Iron Barbs and Toxic, and I can bring Keldeo to 1v1 it anyway. He cannot actually kill us with Drain Punch. Had he had close combat, it was a roll to kill us at that point anyway. So regardless, though, we do get up our spikes here. Luckily, Ferrothorn was a backup hazard setter versus us, and is now going to be getting up one. Well, now has gotten up one spike and one rock successfully. And not only that, but between the toxic damage plus the iron barbs and all that, he is now at around 60%. So my Keldeo should actually be having a lot of fun versus this. It's really the only one that I can actually do any work with Keldeo at this point, because I am toxic, so I can no longer actually do anything to Greninja. So I do click Icy Wind here. Between the Toxic and the Icy Wind turns, I've now put it at a point where it is slower than me, and I can kill this thing off. So I'm just going to click Icy Wind again. He realizes that this is essentially sacked at this point anyway. So luckily, we have killed off the Komo. At this point in the game, I figured that I was essentially lost anyway. So I do actually decide that I'm just going to sack my Keldeo here. I figured that my best play was just to click Toxic and just let it take damage. However, my better play would have probably been to just click Icy Wind maybe, or even not Icy Wind, just maybe try and get some crits with Stone Edge. Regardless, so I do go for the Toxic. It's what I ended up clicking. I missed my Icy Wind, so again, my luck versus Mew in terms of accuracy is just horrendous. Between the Stone Edge and now the Icy Wind, that's a 95% accurate move, and I'm still missing it versus this Mew and sacking my Keldeo to it, essentially. Which is fine, of course. I do go into Glalie here, but I do realize that he cannot actually break my Glalie, and I did realize that my Glalie, as long as he doesn't click Flash Cannon with that Cryogonal, can live a hit from Cryogonal and beat it 1v1 at this point. So I do go into Garchomp, of course, and I click Dragon Claw. That was my safest play by far. And the Yard is now dead, which is huge for my team. Yard was a very massive problem. He is bringing Cryogonal here, of course, which I mentioned before. He's going to probably just click Icy Wind or whatever ice move he wants versus my Garchomp. He clicks Freeze Dry, we do live the hit. Blizzard was the only one that could have had a chance to kill, and even then it was a roll. I do click Ice Shard and bop this Cryogonal now, so the rocks and spikes are here to stay. And my Cryogonal is essentially my Glalie is essentially a win con at this point. Oh, not a win con. Sacking my Glalie is a win con, I should say, because my only play here is sacking Glalie and just having clicked. I clicked the Ice Shard there. It didn't really matter, spoilers, because of course he does have Water Shuriken. So I just want to go into my mindset real quick about the end game. So my play was to sack Glalie there, because had I switched out and he got up a spike, then of course he did click Water Shuriken. But had he gotten up a spike, my Glalie was now gone for good. So I figured my best play was to sack and click Ice Shard. Now I bring in my Garchomp here, of course, and if he does not have Ice Beam, there is a high chance I can win this game, because my Earthquake should be able to kill this Greninja at this point, and I do live any one hit. His Mew in no world can actually finish off my Garchomp, because Super Fang, of course, is only doing by halves. And within that point, my Earthquake does, after the spikes and rocks, 2-hit KO him. So unless if he's just going to click Soft Boiled and then spam it, or whatever, I think it was Roost, or whatever recovery move he had, he would need to click that turn 1 versus me, or my 2 Earthquakes kill him, no matter what. So that was my mindset here. That's why I also preserved Glalie later on by switching hard to Garchomp on that Mew. He does, of course, go into Mew now, and as you can see, between the hazards, he is going to be taking this Earthquake not well. In fact, actually, now that I think about it, how do you click? He would need to just spam Softball, as I said, turn 1. So the fact that he hard swapped this, big misplay. Well, not even a misplay. Regardless, as I said, because he didn't have Ice Beam, this was actually his play, because Mew couldn't kill me off. But it doesn't really matter, because the Greninja, as I said, dies to hazards anyway. So, well, hazards plus Earthquake, because as you can see, Dark Pulse does not kill, we get our Figgy Berry off, and we win the game. So, we shouldn't have won this game, in all honesty. It came down to my opponent prepping bad. As you mentioned, see, also, my Garchomp didn't have Rough Skin. I mentioned that in my team builder. There was a massive what the fuck moment in the chat, and I did actually address it mid-game, or referenced it mid-game, that people, I thought it was personally at me hard swapping into Garchomp on the Mew after already having went Glalie, but turns out it was actually from people realizing that, that my Garchomp didn't have Rough Skin. So that was, as I said, a massive misprep on my part. I almost got I almost got forfeited for it, because there was a big fit about it from TDG, but it's whatever. I mean, Sandville Garchomp won us the game, even though it was meant to be Rough Skin, mainly for things like the Como, should I needed it to just take a little more damage. or really just any of his physical offense, to be honest. If I just needed like a little more damage, that of course was there. So regardless though, we do win 1-0. We take on Max next week. I forget his team name, if I'm being completely honest. I have not actually prepped, even though it's literally Friday of the week. I was going to prep after I get this up at some point tonight. So regardless though, I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace out, guys.